Yum, yum!
Hi, it's Alex. Let's start with the most basic of compositing operations, the merge node. After all, the word compositing has its root in the word composite, meaning made up of various parts or elements. The merge node does exactly that, bring two elements together to form a combined new element. The standard merge node does this with an over operation, which, as the name says, puts image A over image B. Different compositing packages refer to the over operation by different names. In Nuke and Shake it's called over, Fusion calls it apply mode normal with the over operator, and After Effects and Photoshop simply call it normal. Under the hood, it's all the same math. So let's look at what the merge does. In Nuke, we have a foreground image, which has an alpha associated with it. In this case, a white alpha means the foreground is completely opaque. A black alpha means the foreground is completely see-through. We have a background image, and the merge simply puts the A input, which is the foreground, over the B input. So far, so good, nothing surprising there. What does that merge actually do under the hood? So let's go back to the merge node. If you hover over the operator, you get a list of all the formulas Nuke uses. And if you go down there, you can actually see the over operation, which we can break down to take the alpha from the foreground and use that as a mask to multiply the background with. So we get black, where the foreground is completely opaque, and the foreground does not, or the background doesn't get touched, where the foreground is completely transparent. And then we simply add or plus the foreground on top of that punched hole. So we have the alpha, use that to multiply the background, and then plus the foreground over it. Now we can also break that down with the merge expression as a simple formula. In the first step, we take the input A alpha, subtract it from 1, and then multiply it with the foreground input, the background input B, which gives us the same result as the multiply over here. So all that does is basically invert the foreground alpha and then multiply it with the background. And then in the second step, we can then simply go A plus B for each of the channels to get the exact same result as with the normal merge. One might be tempted to simply go and subtract the alpha from the background. So do a background channel minus the alpha. That leads to issues though. If you look at the down here where we get the color value output from where I hover with my mouse, you can see that I now have negative values, which is a big problem. So if we go down and then add A plus B again, you can see we don't get the expected result because of the negative values. So never simply just subtract, always invert the alpha by doing 1 minus the alpha. As you can see from the formula, let's look at the formula again. The background's alpha doesn't appear anywhere in that formula, except down here to calculate a new alpha. What that means is if I have an image without alpha and add whatever alpha to it, and then I have an image with alpha as the foreground, and I merge these, the background alpha doesn't come into play at all. The only place where that background alpha gets adjusted at all is in the alpha itself, where it simply gets plussed over the foreground alpha. Also, what that means, if you look at the formula, if there is no foreground alpha, we basically have the foreground times 1 because we're not subtracting anything from 1. So what that means is if we have a foreground object which does not have an alpha, that simply gets plussed on top of the background. That's it for today. If you are curious what the other merge operations do, you're encouraged to just simply open Nuke, hover over the formulas, or you can also click on the question mark to open the Nuke help, which will also have all the formulas in a more or less readable format. And you can basically input any of those formulas into the merge expression and play with them. We can go over each of those in future sessions, but for today, I just wanted to share how the over works. And that's it. Bye.
Yum, yum!